Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go back over all the action. Mixed bag this week, Dave. Mixed bag.
So all the action,
Action, yeah.
inaction, misaction, yeah, mixed bag, yeah.
I think the best of the action is at the beginning and the end of the show, not that I'm
Yeah,
telling people to
lots
skip
of
the middle.
my daughter got a massive pack of fruit gums, one of these kind of football pack of fruit gums for Christmas. Well, they're old style fruit gums, this type of thing.
Yeah. You've got them
Yeah,
there
yeah.
on hand.
I mean, the vast majority of the games this week were the black ones, I'm afraid.
Not a fan of black fruit gums, then,
Not a
no.
fan of black fruit pastels. No, I'm sorry. So it was tough going, and I'm afraid I may have jumped some of the games.
Yeah, same.
Some parts of the game. So
Yes, indeed. So let's start with something that was a bit dramatic on Wednesday night in the Euro Cup. London Lions 93, Hapoel Tel Aviv 95. Still no Soko and no Oni Urban, also on the injured list for London. They started the game great. First 7 points of the game on their way to a 22-9 lead. They looked really good in the early stages.
yeah, of course. More importantly, it was Routledge and Rowe back in the big.
It was, yeah.
You're called up to the big leagues again.
Yeah.
Dancing Homer for those Simpsons aficionados. It was in the big
Indeed.
league, capital city. Anyway, it was good actually. It was obviously in Wembley, and they must have trimmed Wembley down a bit, I think, with the.
I think it was set up for about 3,500 people.
Yeah, and obviously you have your ultras.
Indeed.
And including the guy who's imported from Tyneside to take his shirt off, and that type of thing. It looked really good. And the first thing I'm going to say before we get to the game, 2 hours, 20 minutes, Eurocup needs to sort its head out.
Yeah. There was a lot of fouls in this game.
I'm just telling you now. I mean, it became an ordeal near the end, and I don't think that the end of the game actually helped them. How many timeouts did they get? Did they get the same amount of timeouts as in normal basketball?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
It seems every time someone has a run,
well, there's also some TV timeouts thrown in for extra good measure.
That'll be what that explains the level of increasing incandescence as the game kept stopping from my sofa.
At the 5-minute marker, it stops. Is that
right?
Once the ball goes out, there's a timeout.
Oh dear, that's 4 more than effectively.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that explains. It didn't seem to be a minute long either. Anyway, but there we go, because they got to get the commercials in, I suppose. But no, London. The first thing that struck me watching about 5 minutes of this game is that I can't remember that team without Jordan Taylor.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
He played 5 games.
Yeah.
You can't conceive of the fact that they played any games at all without him, because he's just so integral to the whole everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The whole thing is just kind of remorphed around him. And for those of us who are old enough, we remember Morph.
Indeed,
in the class to
Tony Hall
and that type of thing. And I'm gathering our demographics getting a bit younger. So
apparently.
Morph. So they've kind of morphed around Jordan Taylor, and it does really. I mean, Nelson is better, more consistent. The difficulty in this game was he got into foul trouble, which hurt him. Best also got into a bit of foul trouble as well, and obviously they're missing Herban. But they scored the ball, and I don't think Hapoel were really ready for it. I think Hapoel were coming out like they were playing against a team that they trounced at home. And I think they were a little bit comfortable. And London just moved the basketball. Zubcic got going early from memory.
Yeah, so there was a 13-2 run around the first quarter break to tie the game at 30, and then Zubcic hit some threes, and because he hit some threes, they put a smaller guy on him, so then he just went into the post and wreaked havoc, and they had a 14-5 run, and were 58-48 up at halftime.
I did think that they were... Obviously, they were 58, scored 58 points, a lot of points. I did have a memory of just thinking how important Kufos is to them when he was on the court.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a sharp, they can do certain things offensively with Sharma, but they can't do the stuff that they can do with Kufos when he's on the court. And, the rotation was kind of shut down. Soloade was kind of the sole kind of remainder of the bench from the beginning of the season who was in the game. and he played kind of sparingly when the other guys were in foul trouble. But in their Deke, Deke was ready to play.
Yeah.
So all that was good. But
to your point,
against that, they gave her 48 points, and Hapoel didn't really make a shot in the first half.
no, and to your point about Hapoel not being ready, Danny Franco said in the interview at halftime, they scored the same amount of points in the game we played them at our place. It was actually 59 they scored in Tel Aviv, but the point was a valid one.
Well, the point guard for them who couldn't make a shot in the first half,
Brown,
Jacob Brown, yeah. I went back 30 years. I thought I was watching Nigel Lloyd.
Yeah, there was
not that
slightly thicker version of Nigel Lloyd.
Maybe late stage Nigel.
Yeah,
maybe Milton Keynes Nigel. Yeah. But just the look of him. He's not that he couldn't make a shot, because Nigel would make those shots.
Yeah.
But just the kind of, it was just watching them, just all his mannerisms, his move, his pull up jump shot, his going at his own speed. Even his twisty face when he didn't get his call, it was all the same. So Nigel, you've been reincarnated. In fact, Nigel, I think now is probably in better shape than he is now. Looking at Nigel on the bench, Nigel looks like he's on keto or something. So that was the other thing that came to us. So Google that as well, youngsters. Nigel Lloyd, one of the best ever.
So in the second half, Taylor then hits a couple of threes. Daka with an and one. 8 minutes to go. London looked comfortable here. 81-67. It doesn't look like there's any way back in the game for Tel Aviv. But then Jordan McRae just took over the game. Sensational scoring, and they had a 20-2 run.
Yeah, I thought they got a little bit tired, London, because you look at the minutes that their main guys played. I didn't look at the numbers at the end of the game, but I'm guessing, Taylor must have been upwards close to 30, if not a little bit more.
Well, Daka played 40.
Daka played the whole game.
And I can't remember seeing that at European level.
No. And that surprises me, actually. But it surprised me, but it doesn't. Because there were so many stops in the game that I was losing track of who's playing when, to be honest. There's a little fluency to it. And so I thought there was a little bit of fatigue. Solowade had some open looks, which I think maybe in the third quarter, which could have blown the game right open, in 2 or 3, whereby he couldn't knock them down, which hurt them a little bit. Because once you're winning 58-48, you're kind of relying on outscoring a team, because they're going to get into a rhythm as well. McRae, they didn't really scheme for him, I don't think, particularly late on in the game. Now it's not easy to scheme for a guy like that, because he is, I remember watching him play for the Wizards. He is an NBA bench talent, but he's not. He's probably getting paid more in Greece. He's probably playing more. He's probably having a far more professional situation than being 12th on the bench and traveling around the USA. So good for him. But they never got to the point whereby I figured out what they were trying to take away from him. And I think it got too late, and eventually it was like, get him the ball, and he was kind of a maestro at just getting to his spots. Once he got to his spot and once he rose up, it was done. So the only way you can defend that is to keep him out of that spots, but then you got to give up something else. And I just think that, again, it was kind of, firstly, the offensive rhythm that London were in, it kind of covered up that stuff during the game. If you're making threes down the other end, you're not so worried about him getting to a spot and having 25 by the end of the third quarter. But also the tiredness. I thought the fatigue impacted them, and the momentum of the game just gradually. It did it kind of over, the Queen Mary turning circle, because of the speed of the game, because of the timeouts in the game and all of that stuff. But they had plenty of opportunities to kind of stop it, and they never quite did. And I think there were two, but their bodies short, and I think those bodies ultimately hurt them. Effectively, it was an NBA game in length, in time, in talent that was on the court, in offense, in spacing. And a lot of those NBA games come down to the last 5 minutes and who's got the legs in their shot.
Well, let's go to the last 3 minutes because that
Yeah.
20-2 run made it 83-87 to Hapoel. Taylor then hit his fifth three-pointer of the game. And then with 2 to play, London had come back with a 7-2 run, so it was 90-89. Hapoel shot block. Decker got a block. Ball went out of bounds. They took a long look to see they'd originally given it as a Tel Aviv ball, and after review, they confirmed Tel Aviv ball. McRae into the paint, scores from 8 feet, 90-91 with 1:11 to go. London come back the other way. Decker on a down screen, top of the key. Big shot, 93-91 with 58
Yeah, that
seconds to
was
go.
just that was killer shot. That was a killer shot. That was, if you look at the movement, his feet movement, the scarcity of movement, you knew exactly what was coming, you knew exactly where he was going, you knew exactly what he was doing, and he nailed it, and that's kind of really high level stuff.
Timeout, advance the ball. McRae, a contested shot from the elbow. In real time, I thought he passed it, but I don't know whether he might have been blocked, might have been an air ball, might have been a pass, could have been any of them. But Onuaku ended up with the ball in his hands underneath the basket and ties the game at 93,
shout
48
out
and a
for
half.
the underarm foul shooting on Onuaku.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Who's yours? Go watch it.
Yeah.
Ollie,
You're giving the
naked
kids a
Ollie.
load of stuff today.
Naked Ollie, best shot in England, 1986. Gene Hackman, not touched by any of the more modern basketball movie takeoffs. Sorry, I'll make it, coach.
31 seconds to go. Taylor at the top of the key misses everything, and then 12. So they run the clock, obviously.
Brown, that was a tough shot with Taylor, wasn't it? That he kind of they took him away from the 3-point line. He never actually, he didn't seem to have it in his legs to rise up and shoot that one in the way that he wanted to. Yeah.
And then Brown in the high pick and roll with McRae gets into the key, as you say, a la Nigel Lloyd with the guy behind him, and he's keeping him behind him. And he kind of missed this shot all game. It is his shot, and he kind of missed it all game. But this one, he got a friendly bounce, and it dropped in for 93-95. And then last play of the game, Decker gave it to Taylor. I kind of wanted Decker to attack, but he gives it to Taylor. Taylor on the near side of the court as the camera looks at it, seems to get the step onto Koto, but then he wanted to back out for the 3-point for the.
Well, they had a play before that, didn't they? Though they had a play with 11 seconds to go, which got disrupted. Where after the timeout, because the last shot came off, I think off a deflection, didn't it?
Yeah, but this was the play. This was the play, and then it gets
that play started with the kind of a misdirection to go into Zubcic in the post, and Zubcic kicked it out to Solowade, and Solowade threw it back to Taylor, and then it kind of did Decker not throw the ball in on that one?
No, Decker threw it cross court to Taylor. And then because he'd come back out, not wanting to attack and trying to get the 3, Takoto's able to knock it out of bounds. So then they get a sideline ball with 2.8 seconds to go.
They blew too many seconds on that. I thought the coach was a little bit over clever on that. I was just giving it straight to Decker at the top of the key, screen and roll.
And Taylor got a not very good shot, which only worth 2, but was out at the 3-point line.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was well short.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Jordan Taylor. I've watched him play 6 games. He's a bloody good player, but I'm not sure that he's that player. I'm not sure if he's that guy that you give the ball to right at the end and say, go and, with 3 seconds to go and create separation, because he's not lightning quick. Obviously he can shoot the ball, but he's generally more of a crafty guard who kind of, from what I can see, works his way around screens, has the pull up, has the 18-footer, has the hezzy dribble, all that stuff, has the connection with the screen and roll guy, can hit that guy as well. I wouldn't see him as a shot maker that for instance Decker or even Zubcic is.
Because he hit 5 threes in the game, maybe that's the reason you give him the ball at the end.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just that, you go to the well one. How often do you go to the well? The water runs dry. Yeah, Jack and Jill, fellas, look it up.
Decker with 29 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, played all 40, 8 of 12 shooting as well. Zubcic 19, Taylor 19 and 9 assists. McRae won for the second round in a row, the player of the round, 36 points, 4 assists, 13 of 17 shooting, 9 of 11 from the free throw line. Brown, despite having a bit of an off night by his standards, 18 points and 5 assists, and Anawaku 10 points and 17 rebounds. And the standings in the group now, I know there's still 8 games to go, but there's just a little separation. London, if they'd won that, would have moved level with Hapoel and 5 and 5, and now it's London in 7th and 4 and 6, and then Patras, Budushnost, and Hapoel are all 6 and 4, so they've got a little ground to make up in those 8 games.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just Googling Jordan McRae's salary at the moment. I'm trying to find it. I've noticed that his last contract in the NBA was 2 years, $1.6 million, which kind of gives people an idea. He's fully guaranteed by them. I haven't got the Olympiacos salary, but I'm guessing he's the Hapoel salary, but I'm guessing he's not paid much less, if not more. But these are high level players. Really, and people need to appreciate that. There are stratas of players. And the level of player gets to a certain height as the more money you have, and there is a significant difference in those stratas. Jordan McRae is a 6'8" guy, 6'9" guy who plays like a 6'4" guy. Who has all the game of that, a little bit like Decker. In relation to the group, they're gonna have a knock. They're gonna have a one-off shot, aren't they? And they're gonna have a shot.
They are. Yeah.
And so they need to be healthy for that. If they're healthy for that, then they have a real puncher's chance even on the road, because they haven't been healthy. We haven't seen them healthy all season. Or we haven't seen them all playing all season, whether they've been healthy or not. And that means Herban, who's I think is a critical piece for them, and Soko as well. And obviously Oni, and again, an NBA guy, So there are 3 players there who, give them a really good shot in a one-off game, I think. Subject to them all being in a rhythm or understanding who's taking the shots, subject to the coach being comfortable with who he's playing where. And because the one thing with constantly balancing all your roster and constantly playing certain guys and all this stuff and having other guys coming in and out is that at some point you've got to get to your best group. Then you've got to know what your best group is when everybody's there, because the margins at that highest level are so small that if you don't, you can blow a game, and you blow a game, you blow the competition. So, it's encouraging for them. It's not encouraging that they lost. I think they needed 2 more bodies, 2 more trustworthy bodies. Nelson's foul trouble killed them like that, and Best as well, because it really put a lot onto Taylor and Decker. I'm quite sure if Nelson had been in foul trouble, Decker would not have played 40 minutes. Just because of the outside shooting that he gives him. And obviously Herban's not there, and Oni's not there, and they're the other 2 guys who would spell Decker. Hibbert played a minute and a half in the first quarter, and that was about it. So at the moment, those guys and Solowadi are kind of the only guys who are trusted to play European games. So they need them back.
So let's move from North London to, is it East London, isn't it? Copper Box, London Lions, 89. Hey?
It's the difference between 310 miles and 305.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Right, it's not Crystal Palace, which it does matter.
It does.
Crystal Palace, it does matter.
There's an extra 5 miles and 2 hours. That's
exactly
what it is.
Yeah.
London Lions 89, Worthing Thunder 53. Decker was rested for this one. Taylor, Zubcic, Sharma, Kufos all dressed but didn't play. So basically they had a 7-man rotation of Ward, Hibbert, Best, Shalawadi, Nelson, Comagan, Weluchiume, and Kaboza. I guess the other guys were dressed just in case. And when it's 17-2 after 5 minutes, Coach Schmidt is like, you boys don't need to worry. Don't need to take the tracksuits off because we're going to run with this 7 and it's going to be fine.
Yeah, well, it's Luke Nelson's old team, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
And he's barely played the night before because of foul trouble.
He's barely played the night before, but it's his old team, so he's ready for that game. Whatever anybody says, that's a big thing. I was intrigued a little bit by Worthing. I don't watch much NBA, I just don't have the time. I was intrigued a little bit by him because obviously Zaire is a smart guy. He's street. I'd describe him as a street smart guy.
Yeah,
he's not a guy who is going to be taking anybody's food. He's not a guy who's outside of the odd, out with the odd outrageous strategy or haircut or a bit of clothing, whatever. But not someone he's not unwilling to kind of roll the dice. To use a phrase, that's never what he never was. And watching them, and I was trying to figure out whether they'd actually prepped especially for this London team, or whether it's just the way they're playing their basketball. You know, they were more aggressive trapping the screen and roll than any team I've seen in the BBL this season. You know, they really got up there. They got the big guy right up, showing right up to the halfway, almost to the halfway line, and trying to make the ball handler give it up. And I think that's probably because that they were quick. They're a quick team, or they're certainly NBL level. They're a quick team, and their better players are kind of combos, you know, and Arisol and Olan, and Blaine, who's undersized, and you know. So I think the idea is that they're quick, and we'll trap and we'll move and we'll run around and we'll kind of be like the Raptors and just arms everywhere and that type of stuff. So that was intriguing to watch. I thought they were offensively a little bit gun shy early. I didn't think they made very good decisions. I was a bit disappointed with Moya, who played in Newcastle Uni last year, so I know a little bit about him. I thought, you know, he needed to be a little bit more offensively aggressive for them. And then London made some shots, you know, because what happens is London play the right way. So if you do trap them, the ball's coming out the trap and it's going back across the court and there's somebody open. Now the question is, are those guys going to make those open shots? And I think Luke Nelson made a few early, as you would expect. And Josh Ward-Hibbert was all over the glass, obviously.
Yeah, he had 7 offensive rebounds.
Well, because if you're scrambling all the time, it creates those lanes, you know, to do that. So they played a really aggressive defensive strategy, which I think probably wasn't actually they probably kind of outthought themselves a little bit, because I think that would be the only way they could defend Decker, Zubcic, and co. But I'm not sure it was the only way that they could defend those guys.
Yeah.
You know, because it made those. Because what it does is it makes the decisions for the other team. They know what they have to do because the next pass is there all the time. Get the ball out the double, get it there, move, cut, you know, offensive rebound, whatever. And so it allows those guys to play on instinct. And they did. The first 5 minutes of the second 5 minutes of the first quarter was about the worst basketball I've seen all season.
4-0.
Yeah. And it wasn't through kind of, you know, Indiana 1931 holding the basketball in a half either. It was going up and down. And it just wasn't pretty. But you know, London have already made that point by then. Then Blaine made a few threes off the dribble, which I think he's probably added to his game. So I didn't see much of that last year, which kind of provided me with a kind of a little bit of interest.
I think he was inspired by the fact he knew he'd gone viral by that point in the game.
Was that with his
with Shuma dunking on him?
Oh yes, well yes, of course. Yeah, that I was going to get to that. Yeah, there's also a photograph of something with him wearing a very weird combination of clothes from my 49-year-old boring solicitor's perspective.
Yeah,
right. It may well be that's what you wear in Worthing, but I think Zaya's got a real challenger there. I don't think he got the mink coat out though. No mink coat.
Or the dressing gown.
Or the dressing gown, yeah, the dressing gown. But no, to be fair, Worthing kept playing. I thought, to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed that against the group that they were playing against, they couldn't keep it a bit closer. That's not knocking the London lads, but you know, they haven't played much. Welsh Ume hasn't played much. He's, you know, athletic. You're right about the dunk, athletic as heck. 18-year-old. I imagine he'll probably be off to a US college in the summer if London aren't going to keep him. But he's still only 18. You know, so there's still raw bits. You know, Caboza's hardly played for months. And you know, I just thought, you know, Worthing have, I think, 3, maybe 4 Americans there, you know. So it's like, you know, I thought they were a bit, or maybe only 2, maybe 2, Arisol, Jackman. And I just thought, you know, they could have had a bit more to them. But once London went on the run the second quarter, I think the game was done.
Yeah, it was. So, best 24, Caboza, 17 points and 9 rebounds. Josh Ward-Hibbert had 12 points and 13 rebounds. And I've mistakenly not written down Worthing scorers. So I've got the stats up here. Blaine had 17 points and 6 rebounds. And Arisol had 11 as the only other player in double figures with 5 assists as well. They shot 31% from the floor and had 20 turnovers, which doesn't help.
No, I thought Best, by the way, Best did what Best is meant to do, which was be the guy on the court who was just, at a slightly higher level, just like McRae was the night before. Best was, comfortably in charge of that game.
Let's go to Friday night and start with the quick one. Derby Trailblazers 91, Team Basketball Wales 67. 13-3 after.
Sorry, 1 second. Team and basketball, why?
I don't know. It's a thing, isn't
Why not
it?
just Wales?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Team basketball. I may as well see. May as well be, teapots, chrysanthemum. It doesn't mean anything. Every team's a team. Every team's playing basketball.
It's an international thing, though, isn't it?
Branding in it.
Team USA, Team GB, that sort of thing.
Team Wales. Okay, so what you're doing is you're comparing, like.
I'm just saying. I'm not comparing anything.
Okay, you're just drawing the link between LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Co, and the Dragon. Okay, right. Was this game on the line? I didn't see it.
It was on Derby's YouTube. So
I'm afraid this is your call, because I didn't see this game.
I was out Friday night, so I watched the first quarter of this morning. 13-3 after 3 minutes. They were 20 points up before the end of the quarter at 30 points to 10. And that was as much as I had the time to watch.
So everybody understands, my guideline for these trophy games this week has been, if it's 20 at the end of the quarter, at the end of the first quarter, I'm done. I'm done with it.
Well, technically it was 18 because Wales had the last score is 30-12.
No, you mean team basketball Wales did.
Team basketball Wales.
Yeah. Okay. This isn't being disrespectful to Derby or indeed Wales, but the Wales guys I don't really know. There's one guy who's in the Loughborough program I've heard of. And the Derby guys, well, we'll review them next time they play. So I thought, I don't want them to feel that if any of them are kind of desperately keen to listen to this stuff every week.
They were pretty comfortable from then on, from what I saw of the play-by-play. Dietrich with 17 and 7, Jonas Dietrich. Jace Harrison with 13 and Raheem Thompson and Simeon Perry with 12 each. Alex Kukavaras, who you do know as well, 17 points. Guildford, Surrey, 17, and Reece Farrell is 15, the only two players in double figures for them. So let's move to the game in Bristol, where the Flyers were beaten 72-78 by the Surrey Scorchers. This is the result we've been trailing for weeks with Surrey. At some point, this is going to come along.
You know why it happened, don't you? Because Bristol made the ultimate hubristic mistake of tweeting something on the lines of, "Do you believe in us now?" After they won 2 games last weekend. It comes to get you guys. It never works. Keep your mouth shut until you lose. Keep your tweets out until you lose. And then you say something, because but the moment that you say something like that, you're gonna get slapped on the jaw by somebody, and it's just like the foul shots that the ball don't lie.
So VJ King with 5 points, Delpesh scoring inside, 11-3 after 3 minutes. This looks like it's going to form. Samuels hits a couple of threes. Bell scores 7. It's 33-16, 3 minutes into the second quarter. And this did look like, what most people would have expected between these two teams coming in.
Two things happened. I mean, Bristol made some shots early, and Bristol played the way they do. So I'll just skip over that. They've been 2 things happened. 1, Boban happened. And 2, Bristol got kind of high on their own supply. They started, their shots became less percentage friendly, less patient, I thought. And the game ultimately was won in the second quarter by Surrey, even though the game, obviously it wasn't won to the end. It was won in the second quarter, because that was the time the game, if they're down 15 or 20 at half time, the game is done. Absolutely done. But what happened was Boban came in and had his up game. Going from no points and a rebound and 4 fouls to 18 and 12 and 20 minutes, and dominating on the glass and dominating in the post, and finishing with his right hand and finishing with his left hand, and just being a player that everybody in the league would want to sign. And Bristol's shot selection went from kind of hot-handed to kind of hot-headed to kind of crackers. I thought, I just thought that I thought Andreas was losing a little bit more frustrated than normal with some of the shot selections. A couple of times he did the immediate turn to the bench when one of his guys chucked up something. Like, what was that? And it's tough, because you have to give them freedom. You've won 13 games and you're second in the league, and you played like that, and you're up by 17 after a quarter, and you're playing a team you're feeling comfortable against. But Surrey's system ultimately won this game. Surrey remained systematic, and the reason they could have remained systematic was because they could score inside. If they can't score inside, their system is not going to win them games, because it's very, as I say, it relies on ball movement. It's the ball seeing both sides of the floor. It's the big guy rolling to the basket, be it either Johnson or be it Jack Domney or even Martin. Martin played a little bit of the five in this game, for probably the first time. Only a few minutes, but there you go. But without that big guy scoring, you have too many wasted possessions, and you're not going to get this, because there isn't necessarily that much space for everybody else, and they don't score that much in transition because neither Quincy nor Andrew Lawrence are primarily transition guards. So because they were able to score inside because of Boban, that meant that they could keep running their stuff and be effective, and they clawed it back, and they didn't claw that 17 points back with kind of Hail Mary plays. No. They clawed it back systematically, and that's when the pendulum of the game just began to swing from way up there for Bristol, and it came back down towards the middle. But the momentum on the pendulum
is going down. Yeah. So it was a 20-4. Yeah, it's a good one. That is a 20-4 run. The last 14 of that was unanswered. Boban had 7 of them. And it was a 1-point game. And then Wang hits a 3 to start the third quarter. That was Surrey's first lead. And to use your pendulum analogy, they were never to lose it. The pendulum just kept on going. We were talking last week about Martin struggling from 3-point range in the last few weeks, but he hit 2 in quick succession. They had a 13.
I thought he shot them in rhythm.
Yeah.
I thought the ones he shot in rhythm. He got a nice pass in the first half from the corner 3 at the beginning of the game. And he got a nice one at the top of the key. And look, he can shoot. There's no question he can shoot. What I think I said last week was he began to kind of chase it. He's chasing, making it. And then the quality of the shot, because of the frustration of not making shots, you chase it as opposed to letting it come to him. But he knocked them down in rhythm, and and that's because the whole team was in rhythm.
Yeah,
that all starts because the guards are comfortable with each other. He's beginning to reintegrate Jalen Ray, which is important because Jalen Ray is a guy who can go off at 20, and they might need that to win a game at some point. But more than anything, Lawrence in particular needs a pick and roll partner who he can throw the ball to, because then that means Lawrence can pick his spots. Lawrence is not going to be going 9 times out of 10. He's not going to be Dirk Williams. He's not going to be Ramon Fletcher. He's not going to be attacking all the time. He's going to be making play. He's going to be probing. He's going to make the right option, but he needs everybody else to be ready to play. And they did that. And it was just it was one of those kind of balloon games for Bristol where the air just kind of slowly pierced out of them. And, I think they're kind of, I wouldn't say dependent, but they do kind of go as Watson Gale goes. I don't think they're Watson Gale dependent. But if he has one of those kind of 0-5, 0-6 games and the shot's going up and it's not quite there, then it does make them more vulnerable.
So those Martin threes were part of a 13-4 run that had them 47-56 in front, and as you say, they continue to ease away. Lead peaked at 61-75, less than 3 to play. They did kind of stumble over the line a little bit. Miller hit back-to-back threes. Ollison hit 1 as well, but they never looked like there was going to quite be enough time for Bristol to get all the way
made
back.
A big shot on the third quarter buzzer. That went. 40 feet. That was worth commenting on as well. No, they didn't, and they managed. It was a game from, as I say, from when Boban started, kind of end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, that they had the kind of the control over, which is weird because it hasn't happened all season.
No.
But it comes down, as I say, they get those points from Jack Domney, they get efficient shooting from Martin, and they're playing to a tempo which is basic, and they rebounded the ball well defensively, then they can win. You know, the teams that have struggled this year, teams who struggle for inside scoring. You know, every guard in the league can score. Every guard in the league can go off. But you've got, you know, if your big guys are finishing, staying on the court and winning those battles, you've got a chance of winning games. And outside of Bristol, Delpesh again was very good. But Delpesh doesn't really get players run from. He just makes plays. You know, everybody else is kind of running plays for each other. Drive, kick, drive, kick, drive, kick, shoot, drive, kick, shoot, 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 shoot. And you know that when they drive, kick once or twice, they're better than when they just come down and jacket, unless of course they're making them like they were in the first quarter. So yeah, a little bit of reality check for Bristol. You know, they've had a fantastic season, and they've just lost 2 games to Surrey. You know, who haven't won a game all season. We've only won one of the game all season. So it just goes to show, you know, this is a proper league. You know, it's a proper league with proper teams.
King with 15 points and 6 rebounds. Bell 13. Delpesh and Miller both had 12. 37% field goal shooting for Bristol. 14 offensive rebounds, 8 second chance points.
It's not going to do it.
Jack Domney, 18 points and 12 rebounds, 8 of 10 shooting. Wang, 18 and 8. Taylor, 12. 48% field goal shooting, 7 offensive rebounds, 8 second chance points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Half as many rebounds, same amount of points. Yeah. So let's go to the final game on Friday. Caledonia. I do this every week. What is wrong with me? Caledonia. Caledonia Gladiators.
Dreaming, yeah.
97. Newcastle Eagles 86. No Fraser and Burns for Caledonia. Gordon was back for a third spell with the Newcastle Eagles. As I said, I was out on Friday night.
Gordon's alive.
Flash
Gordon.
Flash Gordon, guys. Watch it, Google it. Yeah.
Flash Gordon.
So I was watching this game back yesterday morning or afternoon, and this one was really frustrating because every now and then some of the players tried dribbling and passing, and it was interrupting the flow of the free throw shooting competition that was going on.
I was at the, to be fair, I was at the Chimos Arena watching the women's game on Friday night. Obviously, credit to those guys, 1,300 people there to watch the women's game, and you know, flags and all that stuff. That was really good. And I was trying to watch a little bit of, well, more than a little bit because the game wasn't very close. So I ended up watching quite a lot of it on the phone as it was going on. But that, you know, not so much of the first half, but certainly some of the second half. So then I went back and watched the first half, kind of when I got home or on Saturday morning, can't remember. And guys, there might be some mitigating circumstances to this. And I know that, you know, I think all 3 refs are from, you know, certainly south of Leeds, and they're up in Glasgow. But the first half was pretty bad. I'll be honest. And it wasn't just that it was impactfully bad. You know, Sloan got called for a foul for being elbowed by Hamlet, which was probably unsportsmanlike. When Hamlet was dribbling the ball, and Sloan got called for a block. Sloan then got called for another block where he literally got out of the way of somebody driving.
I've got not sure any contact.
No, I mean, well, if there was, the ref's guessing, and I didn't see any. You know, it's just not. That's his. No, but the serious point is that's his third foul.
Third foul. 2 minutes 14 seconds
that's his
to go.
Third foul. Two of which are not. And he had 8 points. They led 17-8 early on. He had 8 points, and then he gets his third foul with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. Which and people are going to watch Sloan. You know, Sloan's a big player for them. You know, so that was pretty egregious. Gordon got called for both the third one and actually a second foul. I thought it was a pretty weak call when Bailey was fading away. And you saw it from the baseline. But the second foul, maybe. The third call just blew my mind. You know, literally, he jumped over somebody.
Over Jimenez.
Jumped over somebody.
It's 2 minutes into the second quarter, and Jimenez is sort of sliding along the floor to try and keep the ball in play, trying to get a loose ball, and Gordon sort of jumped over him and got called for a foul.
He got called for a block.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if I'd been And you actually saw that the close-up on Stootles on Mark's face, you know.
Yeah. Because he hadn't clocked at first. He was
nobody
helping him
clocked
up, and it was about 15 seconds after that he suddenly realised what the call was.
I'd got a technical, I think, at that point, and I know why. I understand. I'm not saying it would be right to get a technical, but I'd have been ballistic with that call right in front of the bench, right in front of you. You know, you're seeing it. But that's just one that you just can't contemplate how that call could ever be made into call. Whatever. You then had Onwas.
Yeah, 5 minutes into the second quarter.
5 minutes into the second quarter, you know, get called back for a. Actually, we missed one. I missed Ubiaro jumping over Johnny Bunyan and getting called for a foul on the offensive rebound. Over the back, which literally went 6 feet higher than Johnny Bunyan and made no contact with him and got the ball. I mean, you literally may as well just say, that would be athletic, guys. And
give me and you a chance.
Yeah, give me and you. Absolutely gives Johnny a chance. Hi, Johnny. And gives nobody, and these aren't calls that anybody's looking for. Nobody's wanting these calls, right? Nobody's asking for them. There's no difference to the game if the game continues. And then Onwas, bless him, gets called for the ticky-tackiest kind of arm up on the.
Just sort of tangled with the fire, weren't they? It was a bit of a
but it was like, it's like they separated themselves out before the ref called it, right? But anyway, ref calls it, okay, that's what you're going to call. And then kind of turns around and does this to himself. Not in the direction of the referee.
Yeah.
He's given a technical. That's his fourth foul.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's just like
his fourth foul. With 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, he doesn't come back till 5 minutes left in the game, and actually the game was basically over at that point.
Yeah, I mean we'll talk about the game in a minute because I've got a bit to say about that. But what's going on there? Just bizarre. And then with 2 minutes to go in the first half, there's an unsportsmanlike call on Johnson under the basket, where again ref just calls a normal foul. Off camera, they must get their heads together, and you see it from the baseline, and he's just coming across on the pick and roll, and he's a bit late, and he reaches in, nothing over, no unnecessary contact, no risk to the player, and certainly close enough to be a play on the ball, and that gets changed to an unsportsmanlike foul. And I'm looking at it and thinking, what are you guys on? I'll be honest, at this point, I was just, and that isn't, the game itself is kind of peripheral. This was like the level, this was Bristol and Plymouth. This was Plymouth and Bristol last year. Remember the game we had last year? Yeah. Whereby, unfortunately, things were, but except this was Plymouth and Bristol without any aggro, without any difficulties. So you end up with Sloan with 3 fouls, as I say, 2 of them nonsense. Gordon with 3 fouls, one of them very dubious, and one of them absolutely crackers. Onwas with 4 fouls, and whereas Hamlet puts an elbow into Sloan's face and he gets the blocking call, Kyle Johnson puts his hand in on tap here, and it's an unsportsmanlike foul. It was pretty poor. That said, the game was won and lost. Actually, by I was disappointed with Newcastle's defensive discipline in this game. In fact, disappointed is an understatement. When Johnny Bunyan comes in the game and Johnny Bunyan has 3 open jump shots in the first 3 minutes, that's a problem.
They were lucky they were only worth 6 and not 9.
Only worth 6 instead of 9. Yeah, exactly. But that is a problem. No way can Johnny Bunyan be that open that early when he comes into the game. And it seemed to me like there was a relaxation, particularly when Sloan went out, and obviously Burns isn't playing. There was a relaxation, and basically what happened was they got killed by Fraser Malcolm and Johnny Bunyan, and Kyle Jimenez, to be fair, as well. And I don't think they guarded them with enough respect, and I don't think they had enough diligence on the perimeter in relation to their defense at all. Thought in the middle, it was it was just as it is. It was Defoe and Tappy and French and Tappy and whatever, and that was all right. But basically, you can let, if Bailey's going to score, Bailey's going to score, but you can't let Fraser Malcolm rise up and shoot open threes. You can't give Johnny Bunyan 3 open jump shots in 3 minutes. And the game was won and lost in those moments when Sloan has 3 fouls, Onwas has 4 fouls, and there's 5 minutes to go in the first half. And Caledonia went on a run.
Yeah.
That was the game.
So Eagles had a 7-0 run to make it 5:24, and then they had a 13-2 run, Caledonia. That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
To 47-32 just before half time. Now, Eagles did have a 9-0 run to 47-41, and then a 16-2 run to take the lead, 54-57. But actually, the point you're making is that 16-2 run, they should be up double figures, not up
the
3.
game should be done. I mean, if given given that they've basically got their starting 5 available and on the court, and Caledonia are playing, without Bailey. Sorry, not without Bailey. Without Sloan, Onwas, Sloan, Onwas, Fraser, and Burns. Right, there is no way in the world that game gets out to 47-32. There's no way in the world that can be allowed to happen. And so, just like the Surrey Bristol game was decided in the second quarter, and that run was made, so too was that game. Because Newcastle did come back and they made some plays, but basically in this game, Caledonia's defensive discipline on Hamlet and Sloan was excellent, and no doubt that's because on the last, sorry, not Hamlet and Sloan, Hamlet and Cohen, sorry, and that's because the last time they played a couple of weeks ago, Hamlet torched them, and also because Cohen scored 31 last week, and so they watched that on the tape. So they defended those two guys properly, the way they're meant to, made it hard for them, and Newcastle didn't do the same. With the help defense just wasn't there, and the willingness to contest the shooters wasn't there. So what you end up in this game is Newcastle shooting 3 of 23 and Glasgow shooting 9 of 13 from the 3-point line, and that's the game. Caledonia. So that was it. Now, but you can't have 49 fouls called in that game. And I know, and I mean, it's been interesting watching the games this week, because clearly something's happened whereby everybody's decided, it's trophy week, it's time to send people out on a jolly. And what I mean by that is everybody's been traveling around the country. In Sheffield today, you had Andy and Ian from.
I'm led to believe the referees for the Sheffield game were appointed when the game was still being played at Thames Valley.
Thames Valley, fair enough. That's fair enough. But I go down to Manchester tonight, and you see Ian McDonald and Chris Dodds, who are from Scotland, right? You look at who's playing in Caledonia. You've got refs from Yorkshire or Lancashire, even with Neil McKelvey, right? Now, let's be fair to these guys. That means that particularly the guys on Friday night who I've just slated, right? They have to drive 4 or 5 hours to get to that game. No doubt take a day off work because they're not getting paid much, right? And drive 4 or 5 hours back, right? Now, I get that there is a need not for the teams to have the same referees every week. I understand that, right? And it's never perfect when that happens. But we have to be fair to what we expect of them as well. If you're sending people from the southwest to Sheffield, if you're sending people from, the northwest to northwest of England to Caledonia, and then you're sending people from the northeast of England to Manchester and Scotland to Manchester, and you're asking them to do more than, a couple of hours drive, then that has to have an impact on their capabilities in relation to that, in relation to how ready they are and how sharp they can be. And you're asking them to drive in the middle of winter as well. So I'm not entirely, I'm not entirely on. And someone asked me on social media, well, how do you solve this problem? And firstly, it's not a massive problem because 95% of calls are always right. All right, that's the thing. Let's get it all into perspective, right? 95% of the time, the calls are right and the players are wrong. But my view of it has been for a long time that how you solve it is that you don't the top level league in this country is not about giving people opportunities. It's about it's about promoting proven talent, and that you cut the actual number of the pool of the refs down, and you treat them better. You give them better resources. You pay them better, and you assess. You deal with games based around the travelling as well. And that might sound like, how can you do both? How can you reduce the panel and then not have the refs travel as much? Well, find a way. Find a way. But we can't be out. If you have a panel of 30 to 35 refs, that's tough because we don't have those. They're not all getting the level that they need. A lot. If you're bringing people up from Division 1 to Rev 1 or 2 games in the BBL, it's a massive gap of athleticism competitiveness, not competitiveness, because obviously Div 1 is competitive, but just of speed. We've seen that in all the games this week. It's 40 points, it's 50 points, of expectation from the players, and I noted recently, last week actually, I see the league has appointed a director of medical. We need to appoint a director of officiating, and then you need to give these guys the resources that they actually need, and you need to stratify them to the point whereby it's not about, we're not promoting people to give them opportunity until you're certain that they are ready. And I'm afraid there's a few around who, having watched all these games, I don't think are ready. And keep putting them in the firing line doesn't help, because you have people like me standing up on coming on here and talking about it. So there are solutions out there, but like solutions, Dan, every solution there is comes with the same thing in British basketball league: resources. You give it resources, and you two things. Resource. I feel like the Spanish Inquisition here. Sorry, two things: the resources and accountability. Resources. Sorry, three things. No, two. Resources, accountability, and what was it? Fear of the. I can't remember. Monty Python.
Monty Python. Yeah.
But resources and accountability. Okay, there isn't at this point in time much movement, and to be absolutely fair, to refs as well. We didn't talk last week. But Robertson didn't get suspended for what he did at Manchester.
No, that was
right. He got thrown out of the game. We thought quite properly, because for one of two aggressive, if borderline violent acts, right? And every disqualification I've known in the history of the BBL has come with at least a games ban, and possibly
there's been a period of time where it's sort of fluctuated through, but I've never seen anything get 5 points before.
Yeah.
It used to be at one stage, and I'm going back to like the 90s, there was like a minimum of 7. And then there was another time where there was a minimum of 9. And then it was just a question, did you get the extra point, the extra 3 points? The only time I can ever, and again, this is going back for as long as I can remember disciplinary stuff, so back into the 90s, the only time I ever remember somebody getting 5 points for anything, it wasn't a disqualification. It was some other, like after the game, you've effed and blind at the referee or something or other, but a disqualification to get 5 points, I honestly have no recollection of that ever happening.
Well, I don't think it sets. I thought it was wrong. I thought it was a kick in the teeth for the refs. I'll be honest. Now that maybe the refs don't care. Maybe the refs just doing the job. We're doing the game. It's for somebody else's problem. I know that there's just been an advert on the BBL website for disciplinary panel members, so maybe they've had some feedback. I don't know. So you have to support them in that type of stuff as well. I mean, look, I remember the clipboard across the court got 3 games until some clever lawyer argued it down to 1, so he didn't have to coach in front of 4,000 people at the Telly West Arena. And instead covered the only game I had to cover was London Capital in front of 25 people at Capital City Academy, which was a lot more 26 people if you included the head coach who was staring at us from 15 feet away. So I thought that was wrong, so there has to be, but more than anything, no one knows what the accountability of that is. There's no detail. There's nothing which says this is why it was 5 points. There's nothing which
it's that thing, isn't it? It's like when rugby has a very judicious seeming structure.
It needs to, doesn't it? Because they're all thugs.
Yeah, they are. But they do. But it does come out, and it's at this level or that level or that level. So what I would like to see in the future when we get our new panel people or whatever is, Roberson got 5 points because this, and this. And if somebody else gets 10 points, they get 10 points because of that, and that. Because my question is, what is basically the punishment for somebody to get a 1-game ban would have to be double what Roberson did. And my personal take is any act that was double what Roberson did needs more than 1 game.
Absolutely. Now, actually, when it came out, I actually did my lawyer's thing in my head and kind of figured out what the mitigation was and why it was. And I'm guessing that my guess is that the panel kind of accepted that there was no deliberate stamp.
Mm.
That can only be that they've looked at the video, they've rewinded it back, and it was that was just kind of follow through. It's still for running somebody over with your shoulder with malicious intent from 6 feet away. That's still not right. But anyway, the wider point of making in relation to that is that you have to back the refs as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly,
you have to back the refs, and if I'm a ref who's got that, I think actually I've got that. I think I've watched the video back. Actually, we've got that one right. And then to find out, oh, by the way, someone says it's the same as if someone had told me to F off.
Yeah. Because to me, 5 points. Now, maybe they've changed it and maybe 5 points is like the mid stage or something. I don't know. Again, because it's not published. But my take on it is, as the referee, I would look at that and say they think I've got that wrong.
Yeah, disqualified. It's either a hostile act or it's not. If it's a hostile act and it meets the quality criteria for disqualification, then it's an automatic. It's automatic disqualification, an automatic ban, and it has to be because you have to support your refs. So having just complained about the refs horrendously in relation to that game, I'm going to say the way of solving it is to support them better, reduce the number, and make sure everybody is at a level. Because if you're a player and you continually make mistakes, you get cut. The Newcastle fans know that. We've seen enough of it this season. So and it's the same with lots of other players. Derek Thornton knows it. If he doesn't make plays, he gets cut. He gets a bad call, and the same refs there next week and making the same bad call. That shouldn't be happening either. So back to the game.
Back to the game. Minute 48 to go in the third quarter. Bailey 4-point play. It capped a 9-2 run where Bailey had 8 of them. It was Gordon's 4th foul as well, and it was 69-59, and then fourth quarter, Malcolm Bunyan hit some threes, and it sort of eased away for Caledonia.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, Caledonia are very good at home, so you can't. They've lost one game, and that was to London. So they are going to make shots in their gym, but you've got to know they're going to make shots in their gym. You've got to take those shots away. Newcastle didn't do that. The first play of the game, actually remembering this back, was Bailey making a 3, and they played them twice already this season. The first game, Bailey made 3 post-up moves, 6 points in a minute and a half. The second game at the Virtue, Bailey was wide open at the top of the key, knocked down a 3, first play of the game. So at some point you've got to be able to guard the guy who's going to be shooting the ball, and they really didn't. But Caledonia did a good job on Cohen and Hamlet. It's the first game that Cohen and Hamlet have both been inefficient, and Newcastle ended up with Cohen, Hamlet, and Kennedy shooting a fairly astounding 0 of 16 from the 3-point line combined, which is, given that they're primary ball handlers, they're shooting 0 of 16, you're going to struggle to get back. That said, obviously, Caledonia was still they couldn't guard Bailey, and to be fair, a few teams have properly come up with a plan for Bailey. I was a bit disappointed that it's the third game of the season, and Newcastle's guys didn't seem to know precisely how they were meant to be guarding him. And I'm quite sure they've been told how they were meant to be guarding him, and I put it down more to a lack of interest from the players in actually buckling down to guard him than I do from the strategy of it, and coaching strategy. But Caledonia are very good. They made their shots. 9 of 13 from 3. You shoot that 60-odd% from 3, you're going to win. There was one more inflection moment in the game. Newcastle got it down to about 8 with about 2.5 minutes to go. And I thought Donovan Johnson got called for a very poor, got another very poor call on a blocking foul on the wing. I think it was Bailey who put down. And I've seen a few of them this week, actually, not just in that game, where refs are calling blocks when the offensive player's making contact with his off arm. You know what I mean? When the defense is moving, but he may not be absolutely 100% there, but the contact's not being made by the offensive player's shoulder or his body. It's being made by the arm. Now, I don't see how that can be a defensive foul, and it's almost like it's an instinctive thing. The refs are blowing their whistle, the feet aren't set, or the feet aren't quite where the refs want them to be. Therefore, it's a block. And it's the same with the Hamlet call earlier on with the elbow. They're seeing it. It doesn't look like a charge. Bodies have fallen over. It doesn't look like a charge. Therefore, it must be a block. And if you go back and watch that was the kind of, I don't think Newcastle would have got back in it because I don't think they had enough consistency in them in the game. But that was an inflection point. They got it down from 15 to 8, 2.5 minutes left. If that gets called a charge, they go down the other end and score, then maybe there's a game. But I thought, overall, it was a pretty competent performance from Caledonia. very average from Newcastle, both in their shooting and their attention to detail on defense, and pretty awful from the ref's perspective with 49 fouls in a game like that.
So Bailey led the way, 31 points, 9 of 14 shooting, 10 of 11 from the line, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. Tape with 17 points, 11 rebounds. Sloan and Bunyan both had 12. Shooting splits for Caledonia, 57%, 69%, 90%.
Yeah, that's the defense, isn't it? And the other thing is, Bailey can have 29 points or he can have 6 assists, but he can't have both. He's not a point guard. They're playing through him. But, if he's scoring 29 points, that means he's in scoring mode. There's no way in the world he can also have 6 assists. You've got to let him make him beat you one way or the other, and not beat you every which way he can, because those 6 assists will be going out to Malcolm and Bunyan and Jimenez for 3-point shots. It kills you.
Hamlet, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Defoe, 17 points. Donovan Johnson, 17 points and 6 rebounds. Eagles, you did mention it, but it feels like about an hour and a half ago, so I'll say it again. Really. Eagles, 3 of 24 from 3-point range.
And they made the first one as well, so that's 2 of 23.
So, let's come to today's game, starting in Sheffield. Sheffield Sharks, 98. Thames Valley Cavaliers, 66. Devell Ramsey in for his debut. There was a timeout called after 90 seconds at 4-0 by
I thought that was bizarre.
Seemed a bit early.
Well, it was a bit early because he ended up being 20 down. I just didn't get that because Kipper Nichols made a turnaround jump shot, but I think Thames Valley had a couple of offensive rebounds and they were playing with energy. It wasn't like they were just walked onto the court and weren't there. They've had the ball, twice up and down the floor, and they're losing 4-0 because Sheffield made a couple of shots. I mean, that just struck me as like, well, why would you do that anyway?
But what happens, as you say, as you trailed after the timeout, Ratino and Glasgow hitting 3. Sheffield go 15 points without reply to lead 22-5. And well, to be honest with you,
that was about it. Well, to be honest, the disappointment for me in a lot of the games that obviously we've seen, we saw the St Mirren game at Plymouth, Worthing at Brighton at London, the Cheshire one tonight against Nottingham, and this Thames Valley game against Sheffield. Is the defense of the Division 1 teams is that they're so quick. They've been so quick to drop into zones, and what I'm afraid describe as like a local league zone, which is a zone which really isn't taking away anything. It's just saying you can't make enough shots to beat us, and that might be right at the level. There may be at Div 1 level, there may always be a guy on the court who isn't a shooter. That's not the same in the BBL. If you leave, Jordan Ratino had 5 open threes in the first quarter in this game. And they weren't just open, they were wide open, right? And they were off ball reversal and off zones. And then Nate Montgomery came in and he had one wide open. Rod Glasgow had one wide open. This is like not taking the challenge to if you're going to play against these teams, you got to take the challenge to try and defend them. Or if you're going to run a zone, then run a zone which is a bit funky, which you're trying to do something with, not just sit in the 2-3 zone and get absolutely destroyed. Which is
it's that thing about how you rotate, isn't it? It's how you move if you are in a 2-3, it's how you deal with the wings. And if you watch Leicester tonight in the zone, it was one of the things where the guys at the top would cover the wing guy, say it was Dirk, until the guy from the baseline comes up and then he can recover back.
The phrase is you kick him off.
So
basically that was the phrase Fabio was used, was you kick him off. You can kick him off once you're there. So you're right, the wing guy comes up and he kicks the middle guy back. But you see I've seen far too much this week of watching basketball of people people getting into a gap and just standing there and shooting it. No urgency to close anybody down. Manchester was a bit of this as well, to be honest, in the zone we saw tonight in that game too. But you if you're challenging these guys to make shots, these
The
guys are
difference with
professionals.
Manchester is they know they're going to get 96 points at the
They
other
know
end
they'll
of the
still the
floor.
other end. Yeah, it just
Yeah,
means you're getting the ball back and staying out of foul trouble. That's the reality of it. It still
yeah.
frustrates me a little bit, but there you go. And we'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, they're disappointed. I mean, this is the thing, you know, we're having this conversation. There's always every year we get the same conversations online and in social media about, you know, we need to have FA Cups and we need to do this and we need to have, you know, underdogs and giant killings and stuff.
Yeah,
and I don't think people get the difference.
Mm.
And I know that you can quote Solent from 2020, but Solent were a BBL team with a BBL budget. You know, they just and they now don't have that BBL budget and they're an NBL team.
Yeah.
You know, at that point. And you know, and even then, you know, I think they absolutely just, you know, well, they won a couple of, they were good, to be fair, they were good.
Yeah.
But that's once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the other thing that sort of fueled that is in recent years, there's been a really good draw where you get one of the teams who's pretty good at the top. I mean, most of them are pretty good, but obviously they qualify by virtue of what they did last year, and the team might not quite be as good as that next year. It can fluctuate a little bit. But one of the teams that are good this year ends up getting who was it got Surrey. And Cam Hildreth hits the buzzer beater to prevent the defeat there. Thames Valley. And in recent years, there's been, even going back to Bristol getting Surrey United. Sorry, I'm not picking on Surrey. They're just the first two that come into my head. Where it's the team at the bottom end. Manchester lost to somebody when they were struggling. The team at the bottom end of the BB.
What's the Worthing?
Get a Worthing type team. And this year, the draw hasn't been as kind to that, although I'm not convinced.
No,
who would they have got? Newcastle or Surrey are the two teams outside the playoffs places, and what I've seen
any of them. Not being either of them. Get destroyed by either of them. And I think what you find now is that there is we've talked about it a lot. There's a degree of.
There's also the extra American as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's also. I mean, the argument. I mean, the level of the BBL. I think the argument, certainly in relation to the level of the BBL, whether it's any better at the top, take away London, I don't know. I don't think it probably is. I think it's about what it always has been. You know, I think Leicester have had better teams, and Leicester second in the league. I think they've had better teams than the one they've got at the moment. And Bristol obviously haven't. But then, you know, then you look at, you know, Manchester, and they've got Ramon and Dirk and William Lee and those guys who played in the BBL before. So it's not any specific. And Nick Lewis, not an increasing level, but the level at the bottom has increased. You know, the difference between the bottom teams as they were, because we've always had two or three horrendous, you know, screw ups of seasons, teams that have just been, you know, frankly hopeless. For as long as I can remember, there's always a team that you would beat or two. And I don't think that's there now. Obviously, it's not there now. So he's just beat Bristol twice, and that means it makes it more difficult for any upsets to happen, because there's a professionalism in all the other teams that perhaps hasn't been there in the past. So I'm not in favour, particularly of having of any kind of extended cup competitions or anything like that, simply because I think it's a romantic notion. But any BBL team that, with the resources they have, that does not win such a game by 30 or 40, really shouldn't be in the BBL. And I don't think we're going to find many teams like that going forward. I don't think many clubs are going to be like that going forward. I think there is a raising of the level at the bottom end of the BBL, which is separating itself from the top end of the NBL.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the old National Cup used to be the equivalent of the FA Cup, if you like, where basically non-league teams or all the way down the divisions could come in, and then you get the romance of the 6th of January 1990, Corby Flyers 57, Solent 157.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's a cynical, awful, Grinch-like position to take, because it goes against British sport. It goes against the underdog. It makes me feel a bit queasy saying it. I'm not going to have people from the NBL saying, you're underestimating what we are. And I'm not. I know exactly what the NBL is. It's good. There are some good players. There are some talented players for whatever reason, if it would be lifestyle choices or just the way.
The other thing about
but the BBL is getting better at the bottom, and that's the difference.
The other thing about it is, you see somebody deciding to invest in some way, shape, or form, or people just choosing to move to certain places. So what's happened at Milton Keynes? Milton Keynes
Yes.
have suddenly got a really good team that are in the wrong
Yeah.
division, and you've seen it
Children's
happen at
Wednesday.
Birmingham, and Teesside have tried to do it, and all of it. So occasionally you get a team that might be down in Division 2 who are basically an NBL Division 1 team. So
Yeah.
therefore, in the magic of the cup would be somehow engineering that one or two good teams, but they don't even do it in the NBL competitions because there were better teams in the whatever the Lynch Trophy is now called.
Yeah.
There were better teams outside it than some of the teams inside it in
Inside it.
terms of the
And we do
thing.
have
But
and they do have a national cup, and I think the Breakers got to the
yeah,
semi-final of the national cup,
they
didn't they?
did. Yeah,
Yeah,
got beat by
so
Hemel, I
there's a
think.
national cup there.
Yeah,
So I just think that unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, the reality is that the investment that is coming into the BBL, the level, will push up the baseline level of standards. There will not be a corollary investment in the NBL.
yeah,
I don't see those clubs being able, those clubs doing what they do, and there are some very, very good clubs in there, and I'm not, Hemel, Worthing, etc. So in the past, clubs were really running properly around the community. And I grew up on NBL because I grew up on Gateshead in the NBL in the 1980s and McEwen's Tyneside. And we only got into the BBL like 1 or 2 years, and we lost every game. So I'm very much pro NBL because I saw it. It was great. We had derbies between Gateshead and Newcastle. It was awesome. Gary Johnson, and I still remember Gary Johnson getting fouled out of the Gates Leisure Centre and running straight through the fire doors. 1986, and used to hate Calderdale. I mean, I didn't know what Calderdale was, but we used to hate that. So I'd love it to be better, but I've had a big whinge previously about this stuff about the fact is that we failed the clubs who are just below the BBL. The system has not provided them with an opportunity to grow. The Basketball England in relation to its league hasn't been anywhere near strong enough in relation to its standards. In enforcing minimum standards or sending out kind of shared guidance for clubs to improve, and when improve means improve your economic status, nothing else. It's all the economy. It's all about the economy. It's not about what's on the court.
Well, as you say, if you go to Hemel, and I confess I haven't been to Hemel for many and many a year, and it wasn't the Storm that I went to go see. But I've seen them. I've seen them online. I've seen what they do in their home, and same with Worthing
and Derby,
and Derby, and Derby's a bit small. The venue's a bit small. But it's that thing of what they're at least attempting to do, to put on a game for fans, for people to come in and pay their money and generate income and all of that sort of thing. And not every team does that.
No, that's right, and that's the problem. If not every team does that, there's no, they don't, the pushing doesn't occur from below. Derby, a quick story about Derby. We went there in the trophy one season. Bless it. It was 7:30 tip. You get to the school, we get there 6:15. It's in darkness. There's nobody there, and we couldn't get in. Got to stand outside 15 minutes, banging on the door, see if anybody was there. Oh, someone came and said, "Oh, can't let you in until 6 o'clock." You're going to let us in? I don't think Charles was taking it particularly well. No, we're coming in now. Because it was a long walk back to the bus as well, because the bus was out in the school car park. And it's just tough. It's tough. I don't think they've been given, and it would be great if the gap could be bridged. It would be great if there's a way that those teams, because if any teams are going to appear in the BBL, it's either going to be somebody in a new city owned by a millionaire, which is fraught with danger, as we all know. And it would be great if it could work, but if the people aren't in it for the long run, it's not. Or therefore, it would have to be like it is in every other league in Europe. It would be the teams from below. But
and for those of us old enough, to see a Derby, a Hemel, a Worthing, these are all names they might not be the same club that was the club when we knew them, but they're places, and they've got some history and some people who will have been part of that.
Most important thing, they got a basketball community. They've got a basketball community behind them.
Well,
and that's half the battle.
Matt Shaw coaching Derby, me and him were yay high in a I think it was the Founders Cup final, running about playing basketball in the late 80s, early 80s, I think it was. So yeah.
Founders Cup, for those who are the uninitiated, was generally the old men's cup, wasn't it?
It was.
It was the Basketball England Cup for the teams that weren't good enough to be proper teams. Was that
It
right?
was non-league cup, basically. It was
Non-league cup.
any
That's all.
team who weren't in. There were only two divisions at that time,
Right.
Division 1 and Division 2. But anybody who wasn't in those divisions could play in the Founders Cup. And my old man was playing, and Martin Shaw, Matt Stab was playing as well, I think. I'm sure that's right. Something like that. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
And Martin sold me my first pension as well in the days when
you
I
a
could
pension,
sell pension. In the days you could sell pensions.
And now we know why you work so infrequently.
Yeah. Well, this is there's not much money in it, I tell you. Ro needs to sort it out for me. Let's go back to the game. They did have a 12-2 run to get it to 12, but Sheffield scored the next 10 points, and it was never under 20. After that, Rotino with 3 of 6 from 3-point range for 17 points. Nichols 15 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 6 of 8 shooting. Cook with 14 and 6. Victor,
just on Sheffield, we didn't talk about it. Obviously, new player watch. Obviously, just after Christmas, Banks and Oganyemi were released, and both of whom hadn't actually been bad. In fact, probably had been two of their better contributors, but they hadn't had enough contributors. That was the problem. And because they haven't got enough contributors, they need their contributors to be probably a little bit more efficient than Banks, and a little bit less of a duplicate of positions that they have already with Cook and Delpesh with Oganyemi. So I kind of understood that move. They brought in, as you say, Ramsey. I think I'm watching the first quarter. I think he's going to help them. He looks like a genuine 1-2 as opposed to a 2-1. I think a guy who can shoot a little bit, but more importantly, he looks to push the basketball. He's going to get them some cheap stuff, I think. And they need some cheap points in transition. So I think I understand why they picked him up. I think he's a better fit for what they've got than Banks, because Banks was basically kind of similar to Routinho. In relation to the big, I don't know if they've got another one coming in. Did they announce another one?
Well, they said something along the lines of a further announcement in due course.
They haven't said. There was nobody else there tonight, so it'll be interesting to see how they fill that gap for their sixth American.
I'm not even gonna pick that one up. Victor,
there's the fish.
20 points and 10 rebounds.
I'm just checking that you're listening, really.
Yeah, Jarrett Hart with 15 points and AJ Roberts with 10.
That's not the Jarrett Hart who played for GB in 2008, is it?
You know what? I paid very little attention to that game, so I can't remember.
Yeah. Jarrett Hart played for GB in Eurobasket in 2009. He was a left-handed point guard. I think he was getting on a bit then, so I would be surprised. But can't be too many Harts around.
Do you want to flip these games around and just
absolutely
Cheshire first? So we normally do them chronologically, but the Manchester game finished later, so we'll do it on the basis of that. Cheshire Phoenix 129, Nottingham Hoods 80. No Ben Thomas. Congratulations to him and his partner on the birth of their child on Friday, so he gets a little paternity weekend off.
He's got a fun 3 months coming up.
Oh dear.
Oh god, he's thinking, oh my goodness, that took a year. Oh no, Ben. Oh, not during the season, Ben. If you time it for April or May, then you get 3 months to at least pretend to be interested in doing all this rubbish. In the middle of January, you're going to be, oh, bless him, Danny Byrne, your time has come.
And there was also no Ocheroba.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
I should say that. Obviously, I know you did. I should too.
Ocheroba and Nabia both out. Sounds like they might be back next week. The first 6 baskets that they hit in the game were 3-pointers. Daniels 4, Anderson 2, and the Hoods were just about hanging on. It was 23-29 with 4 to play, and then they had a 21-3 finish in 4 minutes to the first quarter. Jack and Daniels with 3s. They were out in transition. It was 44-24 at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Nottingham started, there's 2 ways of looking at it, isn't there? They decided they were going to go punch for punch with them, and they went punch for punch for about 5 minutes. And to be fair, made some plays. Joe Campbell's a solid point guard, played a bit in the BBL. last year, Sheffield, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
And some of the other guys that they've got there are, have been around, and can play, can make shots, and they were ready to play and they were motivated to play. So I've got no issue with all that. Problem is that they dropped into that zone very quickly. They couldn't guard Cheshire, and Daniels obviously is just starting, and because Neighbour and Otterobi are out, then that means we've got the 5-out offense that we talked about last week, which means everyone's coming out shooting. And in fact, Danny had to call a timeout about 5 minutes in because Cheshire were too loose. In this game, everyone was shooting, they were getting their looks. It was 2020, and Danny had to call a timeout. And I think he probably said, "Look, guys, these guys are making some shots. We're gonna have to knuckle down a little bit." And then they knuckle down on defense, and once, as you say, once they get out in transition, Jack, Larry Austin, Jamel Anderson, that's athleticism that isn't present in the NBL. And then on top of that, the shooting. So yeah, they weren't really able to guard them, unfortunately, and by playing fast and by going punch for punch with them, which is commendable. It's not play your game whatever you do. If you're going to go there, play your game. That's their game played. But by doing that, they kind of create a rod for their own back, because that's not the team to play fast against. The 5-out Cheshire is not the team to play fast against, and particularly
maybe the Cheshire at the beginning of the season, but not now.
They're a different group, and they had the spacing wasn't quite there, and obviously Daniels is fitting in well, and Daniels can shoot, no question. And if he's left alone in the corner, time after time after time, just like Ratinho was in the Sheffield game, he's knock him down. And so that was kind of disappointing to me as well. Given that they gave 120, they gave 104 and 3/4, didn't they? Which is, you're getting into kind of local league areas there, into 104 and 30 minutes. Disappointing that you couldn't kind of scheme a little bit better. All these games are on YouTube, that you couldn't kind of have at least some sort of plan as to what you're going to try and take away. It's not the strongest Cheshire team. They've got 2 guys on the bench, and
it's a team that can put the ball in the basket.
They can put the ball in the basket. Yeah, I agree that if you're going to allow them to do it relatively unhindered, and I think that's kind of what happened, unfortunately.
So all I've got from here on in is records. 44 points is the most in a quarter since 2013, March 2013. It was actually at the Northgate. Worcester scored 46 in a quarter. And then 74-45 at halftime. 74 is the most in a half since Newcastle against Leeds at the beginning of the season 2017. You'll remember that well, the 156-point game, scored 7.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah, that was
in the second half.
I mean, I remember it well. I don't remember any joy.
Yeah,
I don't remember with any joy, to be honest.
No, it was pretty grim.
It was just a team that wasn't ready.
Yeah,
had a full pre-season with a lot of talent and ready to go against a team that shouldn't have been in the league.
Cheshire also had 76 against Leeds in a half earlier that year in April. And then they finished with 129, which is Cheshire's second highest ever score. They scored 135 against Skooson Harker's Worcester Wolves in September 2008. Won that game by 32.
They weren't the most disciplined team.
That's a polite way of putting it.
Yeah. Okay. It's like one of our more interventionist refs. Yeah, they were. Scousins Worcester team. They really weren't.
Yeah. So Anderson 30 points, 5 of 9 from 3-point range. Jack 29 points, 6 of 7 from 3-point range.
23 minutes. Yeah.
Daniels 27 points, 9 of 16, all from 3-point range. They were 21 of 40 from 3.
You see, Daniels is a guy who basically is a shooter. He's got a nice stroke. When you watch him, he moves to spots, he gets his feet lined up. And he's one of those guys that you think if he's open, he's shooting and he's in the corner, he's going to make it. You can't allow him 16 looks in a game. I don't care. That's a shot every. How many minutes did he play? 30. That's a 3-point shot every 2 minutes he's on the court. That's probably 1 every 5 offenses. That he gets an open, he gets a 3, and he's not a guy who shoots bad shots. He doesn't pull up and jack it from anywhere.
Yeah.
So that means he's getting a good look once every 5 times down. That kind of frustrates me because, I don't think I would hope that NBL teams are better than being 50 points down on a BBL team missing 2 players. I would hope that, but to do that, you have to game plan. You can't just rock up and expect them to miss the shots that the teams in the NBL are going to miss. and I haven't seen that much of that, so that's been a bit frustrating.
Campbell with 22, Seth Hall 21 points and 5 assists, and Joshua Goodemi with 14 points and 7 rebounds. So let's go to the final game, or the penultimate game, depending on how you want to look at it. Manchester Giants 107, Leicester Riders 114 after overtime. A debut for Devontae Bandu, but he came off the bench, didn't play a ton.
Just so you know, ever since they signed him, you ever seen Frozen?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a song in Frozen where there's a mention of chocolate fondue. I think
Okay.
Love is an open door.
Love is an open door. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
song.
right. Yeah, we finish each other's sentences. Every time, all I'm doing is putting Devontae Bandu into that song instead of Devontae Bandu. It's a pantheon name. It's probably not right at the top, but it's a pantheon name. I mean, yeah. Credit to Rob for continuing the Birmingham kind of chuck guitar tradition and picking up Devontae Bandu, who incidentally, again, just to comment on him, good resume, 6th man of the year at Big 12, which is Jason Page kind of level. Played in the Canadian Summer League last year, averaged 16. On looking at him today, I think it's going to help them because he's going to give them. He can complement Mackenzie and Washington as opposed to have to play instead of them, basically. Because I think he can shoot. I know he can shoot because he shot 43% in Canada, but just looking at him today, you can tell he can shoot. But that's a given with Leicester. He also kind of plays the game at his own pace, which I think will suit Leicester a little bit better. It'll be a little bit difficult to integrate him because Mackenzie's kind of nailed down the starting point guard role, I think, all the way now. And Washington's going to be there. I mean, whether he can play all three of them together is going to be interesting. But I think he does help them, and he certainly provides some insurance if something happened to Whelan, for instance, in particular. So yeah, so I think he is a good pickup. I do think he's more suited to them than Thornton was. But yeah, the game.
So this game was, as you would expect, free scoring. Leicester getting all sorts of 3-point looks. They missed a couple of them early on, but they got all sorts of good looks.
I mean, it was when the first play of the game, the second play of the game, and I think Nelson Henry got the ball in the post, and they collapsed on him like it was like 1999 Shaq. and Mark Loving stood right at the top of the key and just throws it out to him. Mark Loving is like wide open. He missed that one, but he weren't going to miss another 6.
No,
you know. Manchester befuddled, they really do befuddle me because I'm looking at them.
I was watching this first quarter, and Leicester was 20-12 out at one stage during the quarter, and the phrase that was ringing around my head was a passing interest in defense.
Well, it's just like I'm looking at them, right, and they're as athletic as anybody in the league, right? They're not that deep. I get that. So some of the guys are playing big minutes. Dirk has the capability of being an absolute lockdown defender.
We've seen it.
Taj Green, you saw the play made on Sloan. There's very few guys making that play on Sloan, in the league. William Lay is leading the league in blocks.
On pace for an all-time.
Yeah, Garrick Morris stuff, and Roberson is a defensive
I think it's Kenny Scott that is the
Kenny Scott. Oh, yeah, he would jump like Jesus. So it's
Morris is close, but I think it is Kenny Scott.
It was like an alien landing at Gates at Leicester when Kenny Scott came along. Dear me, what a man! What an athlete. 1990s guys. Sorry. Roberson's a defensive specialist.
Yeah.
And Fletch will keep a guy in front of him. Fletch has to play defense. You don't win as much as he has without being able to play defense. So what is it about them that decides that they're going to let Mark Loving, Zach Jackson, and Patrick Whelan make 14 threes in this game? What is it? What level of? How have they committed that? If you're going in to play against Leicester, you have to. Your first thought at this point in time with what they are, it's not like you've got. Last year, the first thought was you deal with Crandall and then Nelson Henry and try and make them do something else. This year, your first thought is we got to stop those shooters. Three's worth more than 2, and they don't miss. And they had no interest in it. And they played them twice already, and it just kind of befuddled me. Which is like, how can Mark Loving? And Jason and Dave were on the commentary, and they were, talking about, how Loving's having this awesome game. Mark Loving was just being Mark Loving. He made one tough shot. You know, for him, sorry, I'm not, and that's not knock on him. It's just saying that he is that skilled.
Yeah.
That, you know, if he's open, it's going down. If you let him set his feet, it's going down. And Zach Jackson, who makes that step move, he's making it. And Pat Whelan, we know what he's like. And I just thought, I think Manchester's shots were made because they are great shot makers. They are great playmakers. Dirk Williams is a great playmaker. Ramon Fletcher is a great playmaker. Taj Green is an offensive force, right, in relation to his game. And you know, and if Nicholas Lewis gets going as well, you've got all that. But they were making plays because they can, not because Leicester were letting them. As Leicester were making plays because they were being allowed to make plays, right? Because Mark Loving is not the athlete that Taj Green is, you know, and Kimber McKenzie is not the point guard that Ramon Fletcher is in relation to his offensive creativity, all that stuff. And you know, Pat Whelan is not the shot maker that Dirk Williams is. And I don't mean that Pat Whelan can't make shots. Pat Whelan makes a ton of shots, but he makes shots out of the flow of an offense when his feet are set and he gets himself into the right position because he's working off the ball, he's working to get himself a good shot. Whereas Dirk can pull it from 30 feet. You know, and just pull one out of his backside. And, you know, that's, you know, it doesn't need necessarily to be a good shot for him to make it. So in theory, it's a lot harder to defend Manchester than it is to defend Leicester in relation to discipline and who you're guarding. And yet Leicester did a far better job of defending Manchester than Manchester did defending Leicester. And you know, I just think that they're, you know, in that gym that Manchester are a bit too comfortable with the fact that they're going to score. And also that probably because of the minutes that they're playing, they're a little bit less focused on taking stuff away early on. And that's a difference. You know, ultimately it can be the difference in close games.
So Leicester led by as many as 12, couple of threes from Dirk and an 8-0 run to 28-32. It kind of stayed between 4 and 8 until halftime. Loving with 25 points, 9 of 13 shooting, 6 of 8 from 3-point range. And as you say, he missed his first one. I think he missed his last one as well. So he made 6 in a row in between.
You know, I mean, some of the other shots he got, when Manchester went to their zone, all he had to do was come from the wing to the foul line and he was wide open. Literally wide open. Pass to the foul line, it's a foul shot, bang. Pass to the foul line, it's a foul shot, another one, bang. You know, it was, it was just watching a guy who can play in the flow, who was absolutely in the flow. And if he's in the flow, he is the most dangerous scorer in the league, I think.
So then into the second half, we'll just whistle through this. Dirk with a couple of threes. Whelan and Jackson got some back. An 8-0 run by the Giants had them 71-70 ahead, but Jackson and Loving threes meant Leicester went into the fourth quarter up 2, 76-78. Nelson Henry commits his fourth foul 2 minutes into the fourth quarter, 83-79 the score. But then on the next play, Jackson, a 4-point play, Lewis fouls out and ties the game at 83-83.
They couldn't get 3 stops in a row, Manchester, at any point, even when they made some shots and they got going. I mean, there's a couple of interesting things. I mean, Manchester's rotation is kind of what it is. You know, Lewis comes in, Robertson plays a little bit. Robinson didn't get off the bench. Callum Jones played a little bit. Leicester's rotation is interesting because Adekoya came in ahead of Menzies. That's probably the first or the second time that's happened. So he's kind of jumped him in relation to the second centre, and they struggled in the middle, to be honest. Again, Nelson Henry didn't finish particularly well in this game in comparison to what he has in the past, and Adekoya also struggled. They all struggled to defend Green, and that was kind of the one area whereby you felt Leicester weren't quite evenly matched up, and they picked up a lot of fouls as a result, you know, and ended up having to play without either of them. But outside of that, it was just back forward. You Manchester, you know, to be, you know, you've got to get, if you're on a run, you got to go take that 4-point lead, get 2 more stops, you get it up to 8 or 9, and then the pressure is on Leicester, you see, and that's, you know, but they never ever got Leicester, I thought, out of their comfort zone in this game, even though it was really, really close.
Yeah. So Adekoya fouls out with 3 minutes to go, 90-91 the score at the time. Let's go play by play through the last couple of minutes. Fletcher off the glass. 1:53 to go, ties it up at 93-93. Mackenzie's then fouled, 1:37 to go. He makes them both 93-95. 1:21 to go. Nelson.
That a block charge call, because it was a very dodgy.
Yeah,
call.
I think it is. I haven't written down,
Yeah, I
but
think
I
it
think it
was. I
is.
thought that was a charge.
I thought it
No,
was
it
a
might not have been
block.
Mackenzie. That might have been somebody else.
It
Somebody else.
was Mackenzie.
Did it run over Fletcher?
Unless I've got it, unless we come to it, but
It
I
might
thought
come
it
to
was a
me.
block. I thought it was a run call. So
Yeah, well, 50-50.
I thought he's still just going sideways, but it wasn't. I can understand why you think the
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
Mackenzie 2 free throws. We've done that. So Nelson Henry fouls
Yeah.
out. 1:21 to go. Green 2 free throws ties the game at 95-95. Oh no, this is it. 1:06 to go.
Yeah.
Fletcher with the block. Jackson 2 free throws.
I thought it was Jackson. Yeah, I thought it was somebody else.
95-97. Lee then misses going to the basket. Green tried to dunk it in,
Yeah.
and didn't get it. Pulls the ring down. Ball goes up in the air. I thought that's offensive goaltending
I thought it
personally.
should have been. I have no idea why that wasn't but it actually worked in Leicester's favour.
Yeah, it worked in Leicester's favour because they got out in the break,
Yeah.
and Whelan laid it in 95-99. 40 seconds to go. I was reminded of you say was it last week or the week before where you were saying you've got to be right into Dirk Williams. You've got to be right into his hip, and you can't let him rise up.
But he
And
did. He let him right. He was a split second late in
he
getting.
was a little too right into him.
Yeah,
Whelan. Whelan fouls Dirk Williams on
but
a
he was just a
three.
little bit late. If he'd been there before he rose up, he'd been fine.
Mm.
It just his front shoulder kind of caught him.
So Dirk misses the third of 3 free throws, so it's 97-99, but there's a foul on the rebound on Jackson. I must admit I didn't see it in real time, and because I had it up on the TV, I couldn't flip it, couldn't bounce it back to see what was called. 39
on Robertson, but Robertson went and missed 2 more.
Yeah, Robertson then missed both free throws, so it's still 97-99. 20 seconds to go. Kimball Mackenzie with a drive, but misses.
Yeah.
Manchester get the ball, run the clock down. Fletch goes left. Game is tied. 99-99.
Come on, I mean, it's like I'm biased, but he's just remarkable in relation to his ability to get to where he needs to be at the right time and to finish that going. That is not. It looks like a layup. All his shots look like layups, but they're actually not layups because if you look at his point of release, they're like little push shots. He's one leg's here, one leg's there. He has athleticism for his size is off the chart, and he raises up and they're almost like little hook shots or little push shots. And just Ramon being Ramon.
The other thing is, if you didn't see it, anybody who's watched basketball in the last 10 years knows exactly what the shot is that he's made. Leicester with a timeout and advance the ball. Pass is deflected out of bounds. There's 2.4 seconds on the clock. There's some debate as to whether there should be less than that or not.
I think that should have been because I think the time between the ball being deflected in front of the passer in and the ball bouncing out of bounds on the baseline.
Yeah.
That's a rocket speed 0.5 seconds, to be honest.
I think, did it even hit the wall? So it's even further to go.
It might have been,
So
I thought,
but they stuck with 2.4, ball on the baseline, inbounded to Mackenzie, and he is blocked by Robertson. And
that was a great play by Robertson because I rewound that back, obviously looking to find something to slag the refs off for. And it actually, it was perfect defense. He made sure there was no body contact. He rose up, he got a hand on the basketball. And to be fair to Manchester, that's Leicester's play. That's what they run. They run that for Kimball to go off because Kimball knocks down that shot with a really, particularly going left, but certainly going right as well. He knocks down that shot with a significant regularity. So, it's a great play by Robertson. But obviously, he misses 2 foul shots. If he makes 2 foul shots, they may not be there.
Yeah.
That might be the game, and so everybody has flaws and strengths.
Green got the first 4 points of overtime. Leicester got the next 6, and then Vince had to take Green out of the game because he turned the ball over twice.
No, I'm lost on Manchester in overtime. I'll be honest, because I'm not sure. I don't think Vince got it absolutely right. He started with William Lee on the bench. He started with Callum Jones.
Lee was on 4 fouls at the time.
He was, but it's overtime.
No, I'm just informing the listeners.
And Callum he'd been going offense defense with William Lee and Callum. So Callum had been in for the defense and they'd been going, and he's got a couple of stops. So I get that. But what happened was At this point, Nelson, Henry, and Adekoya fouled out, right? So about 2 minutes to go in the game, Rob has a decision to make. Who's his fifth guy? He's got Bandu, who's just got there. He's got Menzies, who's his next big guy. He's got basically Bowman, who's not really played much, so it's not going to be him. And he's got Connor. So what do you do as you're coach? You go with the guy that you trust. So Nelson Henry fouls out and Washington comes in. Right? That's a total shift.
Yeah.
In the way that they're playing. And offensively, I didn't think it actually helped them immediately because early on, before the end of the game, Conrad missed a three, and they didn't really have anybody roll into the basket. It just changes the way they played offensively. But it allowed them a matchup defensively. That was Connor to guard Fletcher, etc. Fletcher's already played 40 minutes or 38 minutes or something like that. So he's beginning to feel it. And then he sees a fresh Connor coming on to guard him. So that makes a difference as well. So I like that move. I thought that was the right move. Now, Manchester see the fact that there's no Nelson Henry Adekoya in the game. And basically, it's okay. Taj has got 32. We're giving the ball to Taj. Okay. So the first couple of plays, Taj manages to bully his way to the rim. I think one was kind of deflected and comes back in his hands. He drops it in. The next one he scores. But at this point, whether it was Rob telling him or whether, to be fair to Kimball, it was Kimball deciding, Kimball from this moment on decides to absolutely ignore Callum Jones. Right. So basically, Manchester are still kind of playing by the numbers and forcing it into Taj, but they're playing slower because they're thinking. And Manchester are a doing team. Outside of Fletcher, they're a doing team, right? They're not a thinking team. They're a doing team. Taj Green has made a ton of plays this year. Will continue to. He had 36 and 14 in this game, playing some incredible basketball. But he's a finisher. He's a doer, right? Now suddenly, Kimball is stood right there. And Kimball is not guarding Callum Jones. Kimball is coming across to double him. Bang, travel. Next one, bang, turnover. Manchester still forcing it in. Leicester come back. They get maybe some foul shots. They tied up at 103. 2 minutes 46 to go, right? As Manchester are inbounding the ball, Vince points at William Lee to come in the game. And I'm thinking, why is Lee not in this game? What's going on? Maybe he's not healthy. Maybe that's it. But if he's not healthy, he shouldn't come in at all. Right? Vince points at him. But he points at him literally as the ball's being inbounded. So you've lost that offense.
Yeah.
In Green, you've lost the offense because by the time he's sat on the bench, the offense is running. And these are possessions you can't get back. Because again, I think it was a turnover.
Yeah,
maybe
was,
charge,
another
turnover, whatever. But again, because Kimball is ignoring Callum. And they're not playing because they're playing through Taj. And Taj Green now, when he has two people on him, he has to become a decision maker. Right? Now, Dirk Williams never touched the ball in overtime until 30 seconds to go when they were down by 6. Okay? And that's because of the lineup shift that Leicester had done, which meant that Manchester thought, hang on, we've got an advantage here. But in fact, they didn't have an advantage because Leicester were able to counteract that advantage by sending 2 men at the ball and discombobulating Manchester. So when Green's turned the ball over, Vince takes Green out, right? To say, oh, no, you need to calm down. It wasn't about that. They shouldn't have been throwing the ball at Green. Once the first time happened, and they see that McKenzie's double teaming.
I think wasn't it also not long after the one where he threw at the head of Loving?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was the third turnover. That was the third one. So there was a travel,
which on another day could be deemed to be.
I don't know. I've never had an issue with that. Because
I think the rules on that is you're supposed to throw it at somebody's legs rather than.
Is that right? I don't know the rule, so I don't know the rule of that. I've never ever thought about that really. I've always thought you can throw the ball wherever you want if you're in bounds in the games.
I mean, his argument is I'm just throwing it in bounds, but I think he was throwing it at a Leicester player, so it's not to turn it over. But he'd already stepped out of bounds anyway.
Well, again, the refs who I've been telling they don't know what they're doing. Maybe tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. Fair enough. But yeah, so he took him out. But again, that to me wasn't. I don't think that was the right move because it wasn't the problem. It wasn't a problem of Taj Green not getting things right or needing a blow. It was the fact of Taj Green being placed in a position whereby he's not been doubled all season. I haven't seen him being doubled all season in the post. So he's got no memory, he's got no muscle memory or no team memory to decide what he's meant to be doing in that situation. And if William Lee's on the court, then they can't double. Kimball's got to guard him or someone's got to guard him. They can't double off Callum Jones, right? And I thought that force feeding it, which basically meant the ball was out of Fletcher's hands and it was out of Dirk's hands in overtime, cost them the game because they were up 4 and they had 3 or 4 absolutely dead possessions. And and in that game, there was no period of time where anybody had 3 or 4 dead possessions.
No. And then
they weren't
then
stopping Leicester at any reasonable point, any reasonable time.
When he came back in, he immediately got a charge, so that put him on 4 fouls, and then that affects the way he plays at the defense.
Yeah, I just thought, overtime is so much about momentum. You're talking about, Manchester slowed down in overtime. I thought noticeably, and they're getting tired, and I get that, but they can't play Leicester slow, no way. And I thought, the fact that Dirk doesn't touch the ball for 4 minutes 30 seconds of overtime is just indefensible. And I thought it all came because Kimball was smart enough to decide that, we're not going to let Taj Green beat up on because we haven't got a centre. But now, if Leicester have got a centre in the game, then Kimball doesn't do that, and Taj Green might score.
Yeah,
he might score, but because he did, and there was no adjustment from Manchester quick enough, and in overtime, all it takes is 3 possessions, and that momentum disappears. And I thought the best team won.
So let's just run through the plays then. 1:44 to go. A foul by McKenzie on Robertson. Robertson again went 0 for 2 from the free throw line. 103, 105 still. Yeah.
Brutal.
Washington drive. 5th foul on Lee.
That's a good call.
2 free throws. 103, 107. 119 to go. Fletcher steps on the end line as he's trying to wheel around and pass it out. So turned over. Leicester come the other way, missed 2 shots, but Loving got offensive rebounds on both of them. Then got fouled on the second of them. 44 seconds to go, makes both free throws. 103, 109. Dirk Williams, 37 seconds to go, quick score. 105, 109. 19 seconds to go. Kimball McKenzie with a big shot from the elbow knocks it down. 105, 111. And then Dirk missed a 3, but Green got a putback, so they're still just about in it. McKenzie is fouled, 1 of 2 from the free throw line, 5-point game, and then Dirk misses the 3. Leicester get the rebound, and that's the ball.
I think they had 5 turnovers in overtime. I think 4 or 5 turnovers in overtime, and it was a mental thing. It wasn't even play by play. Sounds very forensic, but it was a mental thing. You saw, I thought I saw the belief in them drain out a little bit on the defensive end. And you can't, they had a chance. They were up by 4 after a minute and a half of overtime. They had 3 consecutive turnovers.
Yeah.
That's the game. And then Fletch stepped on the line, as you say, that's the 4th turnover. It's not sustained. And Robertson misses 2 foul shots. So basically, they've gone dry. They've gone dry at entirely the wrong point. And they've done that because Leicester tweaked their defense. And Manchester didn't adapt to it quickly enough. Manchester went to what was the smart basketball thing to do in relation to the numbers, in relation to the positions, in relation to the personnel on the court, but it took them out of what they are. And by taking them out of what they are, it actually wasn't the smart thing to do.
Them's the balances, isn't they?
Absolutely.
Green had 38 points off 29 shots and 14 rebounds. Williams, 23 points and 5 rebounds. Robertson, 16 points. Loving had 32 points off 17 shots and 13 rebounds. Jackson, 25.6 rebounds, 6 assists. Whelan, 20 points and 10 rebounds. Leicester, 15 of 30 from 3-point range.
And they were better than that for most of the game as well. And there's 14 of those came from the 3 guys. Whelan, Jackson, Loving. Negligent defense at times, I'm afraid.
It is. And we have reached the end. And I haven't bothered with the league table because there were no league games this week.
No, there weren't.
And if I'd planned it, I'd tell you who was playing who in the trophy. I know Derby are going to Plymouth. Leicester, I think, are at home to Sheffield.
London are going to Glasgow.
London are going to Caledonia. Surrey are playing.
That will be Surrey.
Somebody else. Cheshire. I don't know where that game is, though, off the top of my head.
All right. Okay. Cool.
But I'm sure when it comes around, we'll pay more attention and know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I hope so. But we may have chucked this all in by then.
Not with our growing youth market.
No, absolutely, yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So we're going to park it for Sunday night. Whatever you're doing this week, have a great week. And Dave, it's not trophy final next week, is it? No, it's the week
Cup
final.
final.
It's not next week, it's the week after, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
checking. So Dave and I will be back next Sunday night to do it all over again. But for now, goodbye.